Commander Hyjin Park had been staring at the same star charts for 3 hours when her monitoring console suddenly lit up like a festival. The time was 03 for 7 hours, and she was alone on the night shift at the Galactic monitoring station. Most days, her job was boring. She watched empty space and logged routine shipping traffic. But tonight was different. The signal came from somewhere it shouldn't exist. The void sector had been marked as forbidden territory for over 200 years. No ships were allowed to enter. No signals were supposed to come out. Yet here it was, beeping insistently on her screen, demanding attention. Hyjin's coffee grew cold as she worked to decode the transmission. The signal used an old Earth frequency that hadn't been active since her great-grandmother was a child. Her hands shook as she adjusted the filters and cleaned up the static. The message was weak, like someone whispering across a vast canyon. When the words finally became clear, Hyjin dropped her stylus. New Thermopylae colony, calling any Terran vessel. We are under siege. Request immediate assistance. Repeat this. Is New Thermopylae. We need help. She played the message 3 times to make sure she wasn't dreaming. The voice was human, definitely human. A man speaking with desperation but also hope. In the background, she could hear explosions and what sounded like weapons fire. These people were fighting for their lives. But how was this possible? The void sector had been sealed after the Devourer Wars. Everyone knew the stories. Ancient monsters that ate entire planets had once lived there. The Galactic Council had declared the whole region off limits to prevent them from waking up. No human settlements were supposed to exist beyond the barriers. Hyjin checked her instruments again. The signal was definitely coming from deep inside the Forbidden Zone. Someone had been living there all this time, surviving in secret. The transmission kept repeating every few minutes, growing weaker with each broadcast. Her training told her to report this immediately to the Galactic Council. Let the alien authorities decide what to do. But something in that desperate voice made her pause. These were her people, her species, calling out across the darkness. They had been waiting centuries for someone to hear them. She reached for her communicator to contact Earth Command instead. The Council might ignore a human distress call, but humanity wouldn't abandon their own. She knew that much about her species. When humans were in trouble, other humans came running. No matter how dangerous the journey might be, the signal continued its lonely broadcast, carrying 2 centuries of hope across the void. Commander Hyjin Park stood before the massive curved table where representatives from dozens of alien species sat in judgment. The Galactic Council chamber was built to intimidate, with its soaring ceiling and holographic displays showing star maps across known space. But today, she wasn't intimidated. She was furious. The emergency session had been called within hours of her report. Park had hoped for quick action, maybe a rescue fleet. Instead, she faced a room full of cold, calculating eyes that seemed to view her distress call as nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Honored delegates, Park began, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. We have confirmed human survivors in the void sector. They've been fighting for their lives for 2 centuries. We cannot simply ignore their plea for help. The Altarian delegate, a tall creature with silver skin and emotionless black eyes, spoke first. Its voice was like ice scraping against metal. Commander Park, the void sector was quarantined for the safety of all galactic civilization. The Devourers slumber there. Disturbing them would be catastrophic. These are people, Park shot back, slamming her hand on the speaker's podium. Living, breathing humans who have survived impossibly long odds. They're calling for help, and we're just going to let them die. The Zentari representative, a being that looked like a walking tree, rustled its leaves dismissively. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. A handful of humans cannot justify risking billions of lives across the galaxy. Park felt her heart sink as she looked around the room. Every alien face showed the same cold calculation. They were doing math with human lives, treating people like numbers on a balance sheet. To them, 50,000 humans weren't worth the risk of waking up ancient monsters. "You don't understand," Park pleaded. "These aren't just statistics. They're families, children, people who have been waiting 200 years for rescue. They never gave up hope that someone would come for them." The vote was swift and unanimous. Every delegate raised their appendage, tentacle, or claw to reject any rescue mission. The Altarian's final words felt like a knife to Park's chest. The void sector remains sealed. A few stranded humans are not worth awakening the Devourers. This matter is closed. Park left the chamber in stunned silence. The aliens had made their decision based on fear and cold logic. But they had forgotten something important about humanity. Humans didn't abandon their own, no matter what the odds. As she walked toward the communication center, Park knew exactly who she needed to call. Earth Command would listen. They always did when their people were in trouble. Admiral Woo-Jin Kim was reviewing fleet maintenance reports when his secure communicator buzzed with the highest priority signal he'd seen in decades. The message from Earth Command was brief, but clear. "Operation Homecoming is authorized. Bring them home, Admiral, all of them." Kim had served in the Human Defense Force for 35 years. He'd fought pirates, negotiated with alien traders, and kept the peace in dozens of star systems. But he'd never seen anything like what happened next. Within minutes of receiving his orders, communication channels across human space exploded with activity. Every human world, from the core colonies to the frontier settlements, received the same message. The words were simple, but carried enormous weight. "Blood calls to blood. Our people need us." The response was immediate and overwhelming. On New Tokyo shipyard workers abandoned their scheduled projects and began preparing military vessels. On Neo Seoul, retired veterans reported 2 recruitment centers, many still wearing their old uniforms. Children on school planets watched their parents pack bags and kiss them goodbye. Understanding somehow that this was different from routine deployments, Kim watched the mobilization reports flood his screens. Ships were launching from every human port. Merchant vessels were being converted into troop transports. Private yachts were volunteering as supply runners. In 48 hours, humanity had assembled the largest fleet in its history. But the real shock came from the deepest levels of classified storage. 3 massive shapes began moving in the hidden shipyards of Titan, Saturn's moon. The Supreme Dreadnoughts had been humanity's most guarded secret for half a century. Most people didn't even know they existed. The Eternal Guardian was the first to emerge from its concealed dock. Nearly 3 kilometers long, it dwarfed every other human ship. Its hull was black as space itself, designed to be invisible until it chose to reveal itself. For 50 years, it had waited in darkness. The Iron Will followed, its weapon systems powering up for the first time since the ship was built. The final stand came last, its massive engines creating light shows visible from Mars. These weren't ordinary warships. They were humanity's answer to extinction-level threats. Each one carried enough firepower to crack a moon in half. They had been built in secret after humanity realized they were surrounded by species that could wipe them out without warning. Kim felt a chill as he watched the dreadnoughts take their positions at the fleet's center. Earth Command wasn't just sending a rescue mission. They were sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity protected its own, no matter the cost, even if it meant revealing their most dangerous weapons and risking everything they had built. The fleet was almost ready. Soon, they would venture into forbidden space to bring their people home. The sight took Admiral Woo-Jin Kim's breath away. 900 human warships stretched across space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. Every ship humanity could spare had answered the call. Massive battlecruisers from the core worlds, floated alongside converted cargo haulers from the outer rim. Sleek destroyers from the colonial defense forces took positions next to ancient frigates, pulled out of mothballs. The three supreme dreadnoughts dominated the center of the formation like sleeping giants, their dark hulls making them nearly invisible against the STARFIELD. Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as final preparations were completed. Around him, his crew worked with quiet intensity. Everyone understood the weight of this moment. They were about to violate the most sacred law in galactic politics. The Void Sector had been forbidden territory for 2 centuries, sealed by unanimous agreement of every spacefaring civilization. The communication channels buzzed with final system checks. Navigation confirms jump coordinates locked. All ships report ready status. Weapon systems armed and standing by. Each report brought them closer to the point of no return. Then, the emergency transmission came through on all frequencies. The Zentari ambassador's voice crackled with desperation and fear. "Admiral Kim, please reconsider this madness. The Void Sector was sealed for good reason. The Devourers destroyed entire civilizations before we contained them. This violation will doom you all." The bridge fell silent. Kim's officers looked at him, waiting for his response. Through the view screen, he could see the energy barriers that marked the boundary of forbidden space. Beyond those barriers lay the unknown, ancient horrors that had terrorized the galaxy, and 50,000 humans who had been fighting for survival longer than anyone should have to. Kim opened a channel to the entire fleet. His words would be recorded in history books, studied by future generations, and remembered as the moment humanity showed its true nature to the galaxy. "Ambassador, we appreciate your concern," Kim said calmly. "But those people out there are not statistics or acceptable losses. They're our family. They've been alone for 200 years, and they're still fighting. If rescuing them means facing damnation, then we'll face damnation together. That's what makes us human." He turned to his navigation officer. "All ships prepare for jump. We're going to bring our people home." The fleet engaged their jump drives simultaneously, and 900 human ships disappeared into forbidden space, leaving only empty stars behind. The moment the human fleet crossed into the Void Sector, every sensor on every ship screamed warnings. Admiral Woo Jin Kim gripped his command chair as reality itself seemed to bend around them. The energy barriers that had sealed this region for 2 centuries flickered and parted like curtains, revealing the darkness beyond. "Sensors are going crazy, sir," reported Lieutenant Sumin Lee from her station. "I'm reading massive energy signatures across multiple star systems. Something big is waking up out there." Kim studied the tactical display with growing unease. The Void Sector wasn't empty as everyone had assumed. Dozens of dead worlds showed faint but growing energy readings. Whatever had been sleeping here for centuries was beginning to stir, disturbed by the arrival of nearly 1,000 human ships. "Sir, I'm detecting movement on the 4th planet of the Kepler system," called out the sensor operator. "Massive structures are rising from beneath the surface. They're enormous. Some of them are bigger than our dreadnoughts." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. The Devourers were real, and they were waking up. Ancient nightmares that had once consumed entire civilizations were beginning to emerge from their long slumber. But then, Lieutenant Lee's voice cut through the tension with excitement. "Admiral, I've found them. The signal source is located on a small planet in the Proxima system. I'm reading human life signs, a lot of them." The main screen flickered to life, showing a barren world of red dust and jagged mountains. In the center of the largest crater sat the broken remains of a massive starship. But it wasn't just wreckage anymore. The colonists had built something incredible around the crash site. "Look at that," whispered Kim in amazement. The crash survivors had turned their broken ship into a fortress. Metal walls extended outward from the hull, creating defensive rings that stretched 4 kilometers. Gun towers made from salvaged ship parts dotted the perimeter. It looked like a medieval castle built from spaceship components. 50,000 life signs confirmed, Sir Lee reported, her voice filled with emotion. They're all alive. After 200 years, they're still alive. Kim felt his throat tighten. These people had survived in hell itself, surrounded by the galaxy's most feared predators. They had built homes from wreckage, raised families in a fortress, and never stopped fighting. They had never stopped believing that someone would come. For them? Take us in, Kim ordered. But stay alert. The Devourers know we're here now, and they won't let us leave easily. We've got to reach our people before those things fully wake up. The fleet moved deeper into forbidden space, racing against time and ancient evil. The communication screen flickered to life, and Admiral Kim found himself staring into the face of a man who carried 2 centuries of pain in his eyes. Colony leader. Taeho Stone looked nothing like the soft politicians from the core worlds. His skin was weathered and scarred, his hair white as snow, despite appearing to be only middle-aged. This was a man forged by constant struggle. Behind Stone, the bridge crew could see the incredible fortress the colonists had built. The crashed starship's hull had been transformed into something that looked part military base, part city. Children played in corridors that had once carried passengers between stars. Elderly people tended gardens growing in what used to be cargo bays. The colonists had turned their broken ship into a home, Admiral Kim, Stone said, his voice rough from years of shouting orders over weapons fire. I'm Taeho Stone, 7th generation leader of New Thermopylae Colony. We received your transmission. After all this time, Earth finally came for us. Kim felt his throat close up. 7 generations. These people had been fighting and dying here for so long that great-grandchildren were now leading the colony. They had built entire family trees in this hellish place, never giving up hope. We never stopped believing Earth would come, Stone continued, and his voice began to crack with emotion. Every single day for 200 years, we've held the line against them. The Devourers attack every few months, sometimes every few weeks. We've lost so many good people. But we told our children, and they told their children, that someday you would come for us. Lieutenant Lee was openly crying at her station. Around the bridge, hardened military officers wiped their eyes and struggled to maintain composure. Stone's words hit them like physical blows. We just needed to survive long enough, Stone said, tears now streaming down his weathered face. My great-grandmother was on the original ship. She made us promise to keep the beacon broadcasting. She said Earth never abandons its own. She was right. Behind Stone, colonists were gathering. Men and women with the same weathered faces. Children who had never seen blue skies. Elderly people who remembered their grandparents' stories of home. They all stared at the screen with wonder and disbelief. Sir, Stone said, straightening up with military bearing, New Thermopylae Colony requesting immediate evacuation. We have 50,000 souls ready for transport home. Kim's voice was barely a whisper when he replied. Permission granted, Colony Leader. Welcome back to the human family. The first Devourer ship emerged from the dead planet, like a nightmare, coming to life. Admiral Kim watched in horror as something the size of Earth's moon tore itself free from the planet's crust, sending massive chunks of rock spinning into space. The creature was organic, alive, with a hull that pulsed like a beating heart and weapons that looked like giant teeth. Admiral, we're detecting 17 more massive contacts rising from different worlds. Lieutenant Sumin Lee reported, her voice shaking. They're all converging on the colony planet. Estimated arrival time is 4 hours. Kim stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Each red dot represented a bioship larger than humanity's biggest space stations. The Dev had been sleeping across dozens of worlds, waiting. Now they were all waking up at once, drawn by the human presence, like sharks smelling blood in the water. "Sir, the colonists are calling," his communications officer announced. On the screen, Tejo's stone appeared again, but this time, his fortress was shaking from explosions. Behind him, colonists were running with weapons and children in their arms. "Admiral, they're coming up from underground tunnels all around us," Stone shouted over the noise. "Smaller ones, but thousands of them. Our defenses won't hold much longer. If you're going to evacuate us, it has to be now." Kim's tactical officer turned to him with grim numbers. "Sir, we can't get the evacuation ships down there with those creatures attacking. And even if we could, those moon-sized ships will be here before we can get everyone out. Our weapons might scratch them, but we don't have anything that can stop something that big." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of electronics and distant explosions from the planet below. Kim knew the math. His fleet represented humanity's entire military strength, but they were facing an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia before being stopped the first time. If they stayed to fight, they would all die. But if they left, ... Kim looked at the screen where Stone was still coordinating his people's desperate defense. Children who had never seen their true homeworld. Families who had waited 200 years for rescue. People who had never stopped believing that Earth would come for them. "All ships, battle formation," Kim announced, his voice carrying across 900 vessels. "We don't abandon family. Not ever. Today we show the galaxy what humanity truly means. We stand together, we fight together, and if necessary, we die together. But those people are going home." The human fleet moved to intercept the approaching nightmare. The three supreme dreadnoughts moved with deadly grace, positioning themselves in a perfect triangle around the colony planet. Admiral Kim watched from his flagship as the Eternal Guardian, Iron Will, and Final Stand prepared for their ultimate purpose. These ships had been built in absolute secrecy, designed for a threat that humanity hoped would never come. "Singularity cannons are powering up," reported Captain Minho Park from the Eternal Guardian. His voice was calm, but Kim could hear the weight of what they were about to do. "All crews have been moved to the safest sections of the ship. We're ready to fire on your command." Kim looked at the tactical display. Millions of smaller devourer creatures were pouring out of underground tunnels on the colony planet. In space, 18 moon-sized bioships were closing in like a pack of hunting wolves. Each one bristled with organic weapons that could tear apart entire fleets. The singularity cannons had never been fired in combat. They were weapons that humanity had sworn never to build, then built anyway in desperate secrecy. Each cannon could create a tiny black hole, a controlled singularity that would consume anything in its path. The weapons were so dangerous that using them might damage the fabric of space itself. "All evacuation ships, get those colonists out now," Kim ordered. "Supreme Fleet, you have permission to fire when ready." The first singularity cannon fired from the Iron Will. A beam of pure darkness shot across space, hitting the lead devourer, bioship dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the massive creature began to collapse in on itself, its moon-sized bulk being compressed into a point of light, no bigger than a marble. The other dreadnoughts opened fire simultaneously. 3 streams of controlled destruction reached across the void, each one creating miniature black holes that devoured everything they touched. The enemy bioships tried to dodge, but they were too massive, too slow. Space itself began to bend and twist around the battle. The energy being released was so intense that sensors on ships 3 star systems away detected the disturbance. Reality warped as the singularity cannons continued their terrible work. But the devourers fought back with desperate fury. Millions of smaller creatures swarmed the human fleet like angry insects. Bioweapons that could melt ship hulls fired constantly. The Iron Will took a direct hit from a dying bioship, its hull cracking under impossible stress. The battle raged. 4 hours, scarring space itself. When it was over, the void sector would never be the same. But the colonists were safe, and humanity had shown the galaxy that some things were worth any price. The silence after battle was more terrifying than the fighting itself. Admiral Woojin Kim stood on his damaged bridge, watching the aftermath through cracked view screens. Where the mighty Iron Will had fought just hours before, only twisted metal and debris remained. The final stand had sacrificed itself to protect the evacuation ships, ramming into a massive bioship that threatened to break through their lines. Casualty reports are coming in, sir, Lieutenant Su-min Lee said quietly, her voice heavy with grief. 600 ships lost, 2 million confirmed dead. The Iron Will went down with all hands. Captain Minho Park was still firing the Singularity cannon when his ship broke apart. Kim closed his eyes and felt the weight of every life lost pressing down on him. 2 million people had died today. Fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, all gone. The cost of rescuing 50,000 colonists had been 40 times their number in human lives, but they had won. The last Devourer bioship was nothing but drifting fragments. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were finally extinct. The nightmare that had kept entire civilizations awake at night was over forever. Evacuation complete, Admiral, his communications officer reported. All 50,000 colonists are aboard the transport ships. Colony leader Taeho Stone requests permission to speak with you. Stone appeared on the screen, now aboard one of the rescue vessels. Behind him, colonists sat in crowded compartments, many holding children who had never seen the inside of a proper starship. They looked overwhelmed, but safe. Admiral Kim, Stone said, his voice thick with emotion. We know what this cost you. What it cost all of humanity. We can never repay this debt. Kim shook his head. There is no debt, colony leader. Your family. You always were. As the surviving ships began their long journey home, messages poured in from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council demanded explanations. Alien governments protested the violation of their ancient agreements. Some praised humanity's courage, while others condemned their recklessness. Kim ignored them all. When reporters finally cornered him at a fuel station 3 days later, his response became the defining statement of human character. We didn't seek glory or approval from anyone, he said simply. We didn't fight for politics or territory or resources. We simply brought our people home. That's what humans do. We take care of our own, no matter the cost. And we'd do it again tomorrow if we had to. The survivors continued their journey back to human space, carrying their rescued family with them.